You can see the slides, no problem, and you can hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
perfect.
All right, I'll get started then. Sorry about that. So the title of this is Can an Old Dog Learn New Tricks? I happen to be the old dog in this. I've been teaching or was teaching at York for several decades. And what I'm going to present to you is a condensed version of a more detailed presentation that I'm certainly willing to send you the links for if you're interested in it. Just let me know and I'll send you this connection. So I want to first of all say thank you to Ileana for the invitation, and it's nice to meet you, Deb. Ileana I've met and spent a few hours with on this previously. With all the previous wonderful presentations, I'm kind of hopeful for what's going to happen in post-secondary education down the road, because there's a lot of wonderful ideas. Now, the trick is to get those ideas out into more mainstream, but this is the start of it, I guess. So I want to mention the two courses that I did this project in was a second-year course with an enrollment of about 750 students, a third-year course, which was smaller with only 650 students. One was a research methods, the other was a motor control course that teaches students about the brain and how we interact with the environment. Traditional assessment process, 10 weekly labs, 2 midterm tests, and a final exam. I've been doing that for at least 3 decades. It worked very, very well. It was easy. I got a wonderful grade profile. All nice. But wouldn't it be nice if we could reach utopia and if we had a course where students read the course textbook weekly, achieved mastery of weekly content, reflected on course material, produced short videos about course content each week, and then created a digital project at the end that incorporated all the major themes of the course. To me, that's kind of a utopian. I would love to achieve that. So here are the topics I'm going to run through. I'm going to summarize on a lot of these cases. The more detailed is available in that presentation I mentioned to you. So why try something different? Well, I started with a controversial assumption. Now, it's an assumption that is controversial outside of this community, and that learning is the goal of education and not testing and grades. We can all probably agree that this is true, but many of my colleagues, that is not the case. And to be honest, I think it was fatigue that hit me, because the students' primary concern was always their grades. They want to get high marks. They don't care about whether they've learned anything. And that led to grade grubbing, grade begging, grade lawyering, whatever you want to call it. And so I got really tired of that and wondered if there was another way of achieving this. So what alternate assessment techniques did I actually use? If you refer to Bloom's taxonomy, and I don't know whether this still stands with educational developers today, but at the top of the pyramid is creation and evaluation. And at the bottom of the pyramid is remembering and understanding. And that's what multiple choice testing is all about. Remembering, maybe a little bit of understanding, and it kind of stops there. And so, can we do a better job of getting up to the top of that pyramid? And I think the answer is yes, as you will see in what I'm going to be doing. What you have to understand is I don't take credit for any of these. I got a lot of help from books that I read on the subject and from educational developers like Ileana at our Teaching Commons at York University. I used a combination of mastery grading and specifications gradings. And I'm going to explain both of those now. So mastery grading. There's no such thing as part marks. You don't get 75% or 77%. Either the work that you do meets a defined standard or it doesn't. And this is really like what happens in the real world. Imagine you call a plumber to your house to fix some pipes. Are you going to be satisfied if they say, well, I got 75% of the drip fixed? That's good enough. It's a B plus or a B. I don't think so. If you went to your dentist and they said, oh, I put in a filling that's going to fix about 75% of that cavity, are you happy with that? No. Now, in some cases, I gave them more than one attempt on the activity to achieve mastery. Specification grading is where you tell the student exactly what is required to achieve mastery. Okay, so as a lab report, I gave them this kind of thing that says, here are the components you must have in your lab report. You'll notice the color coding around each one of the little boxes. Gave a description for each of the items, what should be included, some headings, some comments, etc., so that they're able to say, okay, that's what I need to do to achieve mastery on that particular item. So what were the components I used? Well, I used weekly quizzes based on the lectures and recordings, or the readings rather, the textbook. I used weekly lab assignments. I had a weekly mini project, and then the major project was a digital tutorial. And I'm going to describe each one of these briefly now. So the weekly quizzes, they were done on Moodle, which is our learning management system. Mastery was required to earn a mark for achieving the quiz. Mastery generally implies 100%, but I dropped that bar to 80%. So on these quizzes, they had to get 80% to achieve success. There was 15 multiple choice questions in 20 minutes. And it was scored instantly, so they knew right away whether they had achieved it or not. Students got 2 attempts at their work. The idea here was that the final deadline each week was Sunday night at midnight. Good students were encouraged, or all students were encouraged to do it on maybe Wednesday or Thursday. And if you fail to achieve mastery, now you have 2 or 3 more days to read the chapter again, to study the lecture notes again, and then attempt it one more time. The weekly lab assignments were, again, requiring mastery. They could have a couple of resubmissions during the term. As I mentioned, they were given a sample lab report that was required, and a grading rubric was provided for the students. This is what the grading rubric looked like. It's really quite simple for the TA to do the marking. All they have to do is, did it meet mastery or not meet mastery? And the items are listed on the left-hand side. You know, do they have the title and the hypothesis, all those sorts of things. And the TA would just run down and go check, 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 check. The students were aware of the grading rubric, so they knew what had to be included. The weekly mini project. The weekly mini project was a 1-minute video interview or a simulated media post in which the student answers a question from the course, from the week's material. So an example would be, pretend a newspaper reporter, or pardon me, a television reporter has come up to you and said, what is the definition, or what is a skilled performer? Your job is to reply in about 45 seconds to answer that question. You would film yourself using your computer, you would film yourself using your phone, whatever method you wanted, and you would submit it to Moodle, and the TA would review it, again with a grading rubric. There was one more part to the weekly mini project, and that is they had to do an analytical reflection. They had to write out in a paragraph, 5 or 6 sentences, why they chose that interview topic and why it was relevant to them. And there's some very interesting ones started coming out when they start to reflect on the material about why did I choose that one? What's important to me? Now, the students, again, were given a grading rubric for the video and for the weekly reflection that they had to do. And again, for TA, it's just check, mastery met, mastery not met. And here's the example of the analytical reflection, the written component that was required. They would go through, check that off. The major project, because it was the first time I did this course, I restricted it only to the students who were A or A+ level. And I'll explain how they got to the A or A plus level. It was meant to verify or confirm that the work they had done throughout the course was actually A or A plus level. And what they were required to do is create a 10-minute, maximum 10-minute, digital tutorial presentation that explained most of the concepts we have reviewed in the course. And I'll give you two examples here. So in the research methods course, the second year course, the students were to pick a research question. Could be anything. Does caffeine affect academic performance or athletic performance, whatever? And then use 3 research designs to answer that question. How would you go about answering it using these 3 different research designs? The second course, they were asked to select a skilled performer. It could have been an athlete, musician, plumber, anybody who's skilled, and explain how the performer processes information to execute one action. The reality is that it's the same process for all skilled performers. It's going to be the same way we process information. So it wasn't complicated for the TAs to mark. If they understood the process, they could mark it and apply it to any situation. So that was the major project. So those are the 4 components that existed as alternate technologies or assessment techniques. What grading scheme was used? This is a little bit novel. I used what's called bundles for a grade. A bundle is a series of items put together, and it determines how a student's mark is going to be determined. So for example, the letter grades are on the left-hand column here, anywhere from an F to an A+. The assessment tools are listed across the top. And so if a student completed 6 labs, 6 labs, 6 quizzes, and 6 mini projects throughout the term, they received a D+. If they completed 8 of the labs, 9 of the quizzes, 9 of the mini projects, they received a B in the course. So a student knows as they go along each week where they're at. This is a student who was all over the place, and their mark would be determined by the lowest fully completed level. So this particular student would earn a D+, even though they had done some more lab assignments and some more mini projects. Their attempt at the quizzes was not as up to par as it should have been. So this student would achieve a D+. This was all explained in a video for the students in the course at the beginning. One thing that I would strongly urge anybody who's considering doing something like this is the use of tokens. A token is a get out of jail free card, basically. If you play Monopoly, you'll understand what that is. Things happen in students' lives. I couldn't make it to this week's mini quiz, or I couldn't do this, or I couldn't do that. You don't have to take and deal with it. You just say, use your token. And the token gives them a free pass on that particular activity. So what are the results from doing this? Well, number one, the weekly quizzes, this idea of mastery really rubs some students the wrong way. For example, if they got 11 out of 15 on a quiz, they would say, well, I got over 70%. Isn't that good enough? And my response to them was, yeah, but that's 30% of the course content you don't understand. If you do 30% each week that you're missing an awful lot of the course. To show you what happened, this is the second year research methods course. The scale on the left shows the percentage of students that achieved mastery on those quizzes. And you'll see that they got up to 90%, middle of the term dropped down a little bit. But overall, 82% of the students achieved mastery each week. Basically exactly the same thing in the third year course. 82%, almost 83% achieved mastery in the weekly quizzes. So it can be done. It wasn't an impossible task. Once students understood that C+ isn't good enough, You got to get to the mastery level. The weekly mini projects, remember these are videos. Some students didn't like to see themselves on screen, but you know what? None of us do, but that's life. And you got to get used to it. As Professor Steve Jordans from U of T said earlier this morning, we got to get students doing things they're uncomfortable with doing because that's the way the real world is. Some students found the reflection papers somewhat challenging. They had difficulty explaining, why did I pick this topic? Why is it relevant to me? The weekly labs, I used peer assessment in the second year course. It worked very well. And in the third year course, the written labs were done far better than they were in past years. The major projects were amazing, I have to say. Like, I was blown away when I started seeing the work that these students were capable of doing. Interestingly enough, in each course, about 80 to 100 students who were eligible to do the A or A+ work, the major digital project, didn't do it. And they received a B+. No complaining from the students. I was kind of surprised, but nope, they were fine leaving it that way. Some general observations: students drop the course earlier than in past years because they know what their mark is going to be. They know very early if they're not doing mastery and they're not doing the work properly. When we do midterms with testing, students always think, oh, I'll pull a mark up on the final exam. I'll do this, I'll do that. And then you end up with a bunch of petitions at the end of term. And that didn't happen in this course. What are the marks like? Well, on screen, you see a previous grade distribution. Wonderful, smooth bell curve. My department loves me. This is what it looks like when you use alternate assessment techniques, in my case. But I don't care. To me, this shows that students have learned and that the number of people on the troublesome end, they've dropped the course, which is fine. They'll take it again next year or do it another way. Same thing happened in the third year course. And what did the students think? Okay, I've got all kinds of data here. I'm going to run through it fairly quickly because I know we're out of time. Students felt they had more control over the grades. You have to trust me on this. I'm not going to go through each one of the percentages, but you can look at it later. Definitely, they felt they had more control. They felt far less stressed with this method than the traditional method that I've been using for 30+ years. They spent more time on this course than they did with the traditional method. And that's what we want. We want them spending time on it. They valued this approach. It improved their learning. They felt they learned more course content. They felt they retained more knowledge using this method than they had using the traditional method that most of my department members use. Would they choose this format over other courses? 65% of them said, guaranteed, we'd far prefer to do it this way. My impressions: alternate assessment techniques can work in large courses. It results in deeper learning. It requires consistent effort from the students. And I would use this method again in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, I retired, so I can't do it anymore. But I've been trying to encourage colleagues to be doing it because I think it's a really, really useful method of teaching. So I'll open it up to questions. If you do want to contact me about it, I know I've run through that fairly quickly, but I'm certainly willing to share any of this with you.
Merv, I think I would speak on behalf of everybody that just heard that presentation. You deserve a lot of congratulations. A lot of people would teach for 30 years, and why bother changing now? That, you know, I think you're the exception to that, and I think you're to be congratulated for that. People would like to see you publish that. They're making those comments, and everybody appreciated seeing the data on how things turned out. So, you know, seeing that quickly visually really helped. So thank you very much.